Hello! We've reached the final major assignment of the course. In this assignment, you'll be given the opportunity to reflect on yourself as a writer and your development, to think about what you've learned about writing over this course, and what you've learned about writing in a couple of different disciplines. Research tells us that when you're given the opportunity to reflect on how far you've come in a course, then deeper learning occurs and you take more knowledge that you've created for yourself out of the course, and that's the goal here. So in your next paper, you won't be analyzing a text that is written by someone else, is written by an expert. You'll be analyzing your own text and comparing it to things that you read about in the beginning of the semester. So I'll explain what you're going to do in larger strokes in this presentation to give you an idea of the tasks that you'll be doing in this final paper. It might be a little bit different from a writing assignment that you've done before, but that's okay. I think you're going to enjoy it. The first way that you'll prepare for this final assignment is to reread the Kellogg article that you read at the beginning of the course. This was about professional writers and the expertise that they've developed over the course of their careers as writers. So you'll reread that article looking for some key words and concepts that you are more familiar with now that you've been writing a lot and receiving feedback. So you can use some of these words in the article that maybe you didn't concentrate on a lot when you were summarizing it, but they'll have more meaning for you now that you've been through the course. So you'll reread Kellogg and take some of those concepts to apply to yourself now that you are more of an expert at academic writing than you were when you began the course. The next text that you'll read is the reflection that you did over your own writing process and your environment and habits. That was back in Module 1. I meant for you to record the way that you typically wrote at the beginning of the course, and so that would give you the opportunity to reflect on that, and if anything has changed, if you've been able to improve that process, or if not improve it, then just learn more about what works for you and what doesn't. So you'll read your kind of encapsulation of what you wrote like at the beginning of this course and do some comparison to what you write like now. So this is another text that you'll be reflecting on, and it is a text that you've written as opposed to one by experts. So you can use this reflection about your writing process as some evidence in the paper that you'll be writing for this final assignment. The next way you're going to prepare for this assignment is to reread all of your papers. Now, since you've gotten the grade on them, you may not have gone back and looked at what you did. But this is your opportunity to go back and look at your summary paper, your revised summary paper, your rhetorical analysis, comparative rhetorical analysis, and any optional revisions that you may have done. So when you're looking back at all your papers, you're going to be looking for development, your development as a writer. That can mean a couple of things. It can definitely mean that you can see improvement over the course of your writing assignments during this class. So if you've gotten better at something that you really struggled with at the beginning, that will be something that will be great to write about in this reflective paper. But development can also mean that you have a new awareness of something that you didn't realize before. So if you can see that, for example, you really were trying to get better at incorporating quotations as evidence, you still have a ways to go where you could improve that. So just realizing that that's an area for improvement, that is also development. So it doesn't, when you're arguing about your development as a writer, it's not synonymous with improvement. So even if you become more knowledgeable about an area where, not necessarily in this class, but in future classes, you could work on some aspect of your writing process or your writing style, then that also counts as development. So it's not that, it's a little bit simplistic to think of it as ways that you have improved and ways that you are still a bad writer, but you're looking for ways that you are more aware of your writing style with academic writing than you were at the beginning of the course. When you're looking at your own writing, like I was saying, you have been looking at the writing of experts, and you've read about how experts write. But in this case, your text is the one that you're analyzing. So you can apply the same rhetorical terminology that you've applied to these other texts to your own writing. So those include ethos, pathos, logos, author, audience, text, structure, research. Did I forget one? I think I got them all. So you can apply those terms to describe your own writing, because you can apply these terms to describe any writing. As hopefully you've realized over the activities where we looked at visual texts, you've definitely, looked at your peers' text and saw other student writing. So now you're going to be looking at your writing as a student, but you're going to try to be looking at it more objectively. You also have some options other than the rhetorical terminology that we've been using the whole semester. Like I was saying, you can look at the Kellogg article, and if you find some terms that Kellogg uses or other scholars that he cites that they use to describe experts' writing process or things that they have to know or do in order to write well and fluently and consistently, you can use those to describe your own writing process and what you now know about writing and yourself as a writer. So the list can be long. I've pinpointed some terms for you that I think might be helpful for you, but if you find anything else in that article that you think will be helpful to describe what I've been talking about as yourself as a writer, then you can use those terms from Kellogg. But you don't have to, because I know that some of these terms they're basically jargon in composition studies or maybe psychology. So you don't have to use these if you don't feel comfortable deploying them, but you can if you feel like it will be if it will assist you in making your case about your development as a writer. Okay, now this next part will involve definitely some metacognition. Metacognition means thinking about your own thinking, and this is really where some deep learning can occur. So this is where being objective and seeing your writing as sort of an outsider or a more objective observer will help you internalize what it is that you're doing when you're writing. So you're going to be using your papers as evidence of your development. And you can also use your experience. The way you're going to use your own writing is as the textual evidence that you've been incorporating in your analysis papers. So that means you'll be able to quote from your own papers. You'll do this just the same way as you've been incorporating quotations before. It doesn't matter what citation system you use. You can choose to go back to MLA if you feel more comfortable with that. You can choose to use the citation system that you were using in your writing about your disciplinary text. Just be consistent. So you'll be using quotes from your own papers as evidence of your development, because it's not going to be good if you just make some assertions or some unfounded claims that don't have any evidence to back them up. So, a general bad example would be, I've really improved as a writer. I'm much better at incorporating quotations this semester than I was. And then move on to the next point. You want to find examples of the way that you were able to incorporate quotations in your first paper, if possible, and then an example from your most recent paper, a revision or your comparative rhetorical analysis, so that I can see the difference. I won't be able to flip back and forth from all your papers and find the concepts and the skills that you're referencing. You will need to take that evidence out of your own papers and use it to show that what you're saying is correct. So that these are pieces of evidence to bolster your analysis. So most of that will come from your papers. You can also cite Kellogg. You can quote Kellogg. You can also quote the description of your own writing process that you wrote at the very beginning of the course. So I did that so that you can start thinking about your writing process, but also so that you can have some evidence, kind of a snapshot of the way that you wrote at the very beginning of the course, and so then you can compare that to the way that you write now. So you will do some describing of the way that you write now, but the more evidence you can put in this paper, the better. Since you'll be using your own writing and talking about yourself as a writer, it is fine and encouraged to use first person or to use I in this paper. In the other papers, it hasn't been as appropriate because you're not really the center of attention in academic writing. It's uncommon to see the usage of I in academic writing, as you've probably noticed. But it depends on the field. But in this paper, you would have to do some gymnastics of language and use a lot of passive voice, which is can kind of get repetitive. So definitely feel free to use I to write in first person because you are writing about yourself. You don't need to hide that fact. So in other papers, it may not be a good idea, and this is something that you'll want to ask your professors about when you're writing for them going forward. But in this assignment, it's okay. I give you permission. So there are 3 major questions you'll be trying to answer in this essay. You don't have to give equal time to all of them. You don't necessarily have to respond to all of them, but I think it will help you if you do some reflection on all of these questions as you're writing this final essay. So one is, how have you developed as a writer over the course of this class on writing? The other is, what do you know about writing now that you didn't at the beginning of the course? And you've definitely learned something about writing in a couple of different disciplines since you've been analyzing those articles. So what do you now know that you didn't? You've been talking about and describing and analyzing what that writing looks like in your papers, but now you can talk more about what your own learning process. So you are the center of attention in this paper, so you can talk about what you've actually learned, or some things that you don't quite understand yet about academic articles, the writing in a particular discipline, even if it's your own. Because it's perfectly fine if, as we've done sort of an introduction to writing in your major or your discipline, that it's complicated. They're complex, dense texts. They're written for an expert audience. It still might seem kind of like a foreign language to you, and that's okay. I'm trying to stress that you don't need to make a big case in this paper that you're a great writer, you were a bad one before, but now you're an awesome writer, and it's all due to this course. Because I know that one course is not like a one-shot inoculation against, troubled or poor writing in the future. Every writer still struggles, especially when they move from one task to another, or they're writing from, they change audiences, or they change genres that they're writing in. So you've written these rhetorical analysis papers, a summary, comparative analysis, and this reflective analysis, but when you go to write a lab report in your science class, you probably will still struggle with it, and that's okay. So you might be able to predict some difficulties you're going to face in the future. You can talk about things that you have learned about writing in the academic setting, but you can also talk about things that you still don't really get yet, and that's okay. Because the whole process will be helpful for you. If you know what you don't know, you can be on the lookout for ways to gain that knowledge in the future. So I hope you enjoy this assignment. We'll have more practice and more activities leading up to your completion of this assignment, of course. But that's where you're headed. And so get ready for some fun metacognitive experiences. And I will see you in the next lecture.